we're all sitting around here doing all the work. And we'd like to provide opportunities for you to hear different kinds of programs, and that's along with certain social events along the way. Our interest and our goals is to support the senior center with things outside their budget. And so we're pretty active and enjoy your company. Before we start, our next program is going to be May 2nd. We're celebrating Cinco de Mayo, a couple days early, but we'll make it a nice Mexican festivity. We have a wonderful DJ coming, and we'll have tacos and virgin margaritas, and we have a good time. So if you're interested in joining any of these events, there's always a sign-up sheet here. And make sure you kind of look these over. Anything of your interest, sign up there. So I'd like to welcome Jean Dwinnell tonight. She's going to give you a little history on Douglas. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to her. She's going to tell you about herself and fill you in on some of the early history details.
Thank you. Welcome. As she said, my name is Jean Dwinnell. I feel I have a special connection to this town. Can everyone hear me all right first? Yes? Okay. My mother was born and raised here. I get my birth certificate at the Douglas Town Hall. But I didn't live in Douglas until 1984. How was this possible? The day my mother went into the hospital to have me, she lived on B Street, in that big red house right in the middle of the street. When she left the hospital, the family had moved to Bellingham. So, when she was admitted to the hospital, her address was B Street, Douglas. So I get my birth certificate here in Douglas. I think a very unique situation. And I'm glad I do. I'm glad I get my birth certificate there. I come for vacations in the summer to stay with my grandparents. They were the Monroes. They lived on Gilboa Street. I say Gilboa Street, not Gilboa. Growing up, it was always Gilboa Street. I did read an article in some of my research about the town and where the name came from. Evidently, there were a lot of little winding brooks and rivers and streams that come down and run through Douglas. And it reminded the settlers of a device called a gilboa. It was used to make sausage. So they named that street Gilboa Street. The spelling was a little bit different, but it was always Gilboa Street. So one name of a street that you kind of got a little more history on. History, when you hear the word history, you think of boring names and facts that you probably had to memorize when you were going to school. I'm going to provide you with some facts and figures. Many you may already know. I'm going to tell you why and how Douglas came to be. And then I'm going to give you some stories of different things that happened through the years. I hope I tell you about things you've never heard about. Probably there are several things that you will know. So, who do we blame or thank for people coming out here to the wilderness? Some people might say Sherburne. A lot of you may know this was originally called New Sherburne. That would be the wrong answer. The ones we should thank are the people of Framingham. In the handout I gave with the little maps on here, this one, this gray section is the part that was annexed from Sherburne and became part of Framingham. Framingham wanted to incorporate. Sherburne already was an incorporated town. In the process of Framingham being incorporated, they were given that little gray section of land that was once part of Sherburne. Sherman people weren't happy. They were pretty much self-contained. They produced anything they needed themselves. Very happy community, close community. They were already incorporated, but this was just 26 years later that they were going to lose this land to Framingham. They weren't happy. These people were no longer going to be able to avail themselves to the services that they got from Sherman, because they were now part of the city. So Sherman petitioned the court for restitution for losing this land. They petitioned King George III. He was the ruler in England, and of course, they owned us. They owned the United States, or we weren't a country yet. Framingham wasn't known as Framingham at the time. It was known as the Danforth Plantation. And Mr. Danforth, Thomas Danforth, pretty much leased all his land to different entities. And you may see some of those names on the maps that I gave out. Did I give you anything? Yes, this map here. This was all Framingham. The shaded part was part of Sherman. So Sherman petitioned King George for restitution. They started in 1700. Well, they started when Framingham first got it. And they got their answer in 1700. King George granted them a lot of land, of 4,000, I think it was 4,000 acres, in the woods, in the wilderness, about 25 miles away from where they were living at that time. The 17 families who were forced to become part of Framingham got their lots of land free, because that was their restitution for their loss. Eventually, they received 2 other lots of land, and they had to divide this. They had to plot everything out once they were given this land. So, in June of 1715, they selected a committee to come out here, survey the land, decide how they were going to divide it among the people, and the size of the lots had to be chosen. The people who were being misplaced, they had to choose which of these lots they wanted to live on. This map that I gave you, and I'll go over it because I know it's dark and you can't really read a lot of it, but this is all the different lots that were laid on. Each little square represents somebody's boundaries for them. So once the boundaries were completed, they had to pay some people who did it. The amount for all the surveying of the lots was 10 pounds. In English, in American money today, that would have been $11.25. So, seems like a deal to us, but to them, I'm sure it wasn't. The 4,000 acres, which was the first lot that they received, were divided among 105 persons. 17 of them were named Morse. In 1715, they got another 3,000 acres, and then later they purchased themselves another 3,700 acres. There were other families that wanted to come out here, who wouldn't want to travel 25 miles through the forest and build a new house. But they had to buy their lands. The displaced people got it free. Anybody else who wanted to come, they had to pay for their lots. Some other tracts of land were given to non-families. The Boston's Men's Club, they had some acreage around Wallen Pond Hill. Governor Bradstreet was given 500 of acres up in the northeast corner for some meritorious service he had performed. And then David Draper had 600 acres in the northeast corner. And Nathaniel Brewer Farm, had 800 acres. That was just below what Bradstreet and Draper had gotten. Those all out in the, past the common area out there. That's where the first settlers were. There were other families already living in the area. One of them was Simon Chamberlain. He had a 160-acre farm southwesterly of Thompson Road. The Aldridge farm was in the extreme south part of the town, west of the Providence Turnpike. And the Streeter farm was on Webster Road. Now these three properties, the people maintained them, and they became part of Douglas. So we had some people already settled here, and when Douglas came out, when the people came out from Sherburne, their land where they already lived was incorporated in what was given as property for Sherburne. So they just became part of the town. They kept their property same as it was. They weren't affected in any way. The first to settle, there are some well-known names who were among our first residents. Several, I'm sure, you will know. Obviously, the Morses. Then we had the Hills, the Browns, the Balcombs, Wallaces, Jones, Whiting, you know, like Whiting Avenue up the road here. Dudley, a lot of Dudleys were in town. Whitney's, Fairbank, Jefferson, Reed, Gould, Thayer, Aldridge, and Humes. There were many others, but those were the more prominent families. My last check in the town book, all but 5 of those names are still residents here in Douglas. And the ones that are not there any longer are the Whitings, the Jeffersons, the Fairbanks, and the Humes. I'm sure there may be other relatives of some of those ancestors, maybe with a different name because of marriage, but these are the names that were most prominent at the time. But who was first to come out here? The first from Sherburne to actually relocate to New Sherburne was Ephraim Hill. On the 29th of December in 1721, a meeting of the inhabitants of Sherburne granted to him and his heirs forever 20 acres of land for being the first person to settle it here. I don't know if that's still in effect, but at that time it was supposed to be forever. The naming of the town. Many of you probably have heard of Dr. Douglas, who the town was named after. There's been some animosity towards him because supposedly he didn't fulfill his promise to the town for naming it after him. Dr. Douglas was a prominent physician in Boston. Everybody knew who he was. He wrote several books. He was instrumental in helping with take care of smallpox, as well as writing several other books. Very well known. He had offered for the privilege of the town being named after him $500 in the old tenor for establishing and maintaining a free school. He gave them 30 acres of land that already had a house and barn standing on the property. But he had some stipulations. The land was not to be sold. Within a few years, the town sold the land. Because they invested the money for the benefit of the school fund, because they invested for the school fund, they felt that they had fulfilled the obligation. I don't. I think in today's world, a court of law wouldn't think they did. But they decided that's what they were going to do. They sold the land. The town kept $900 from the sale and invested the balance in non-productive securities. So I don't think they stood up to their agreement. Other things that he had said he would provide was a bell for the center school, £50 a year for 7 years to support ministry. Quite a portion was never received. So I can understand the town was upset because they didn't think they did anything wrong. They thought they upheld their agreement. So in March of 1753, a committee of Captain David White and Captain Caleb Hill were sent to Boston to get the rest of what he had promised. They came back, couldn't find it. A year later, in 1754, the committee again sent them out to demand, receive, and recover the remainder of the donations. Came back, said they couldn't find it. Now, Dr. Douglas, as I mentioned, was very prominent in Boston. Wrote tons of books, lectures. Everybody knew him. Well, there was a good reason why in 1753 and 54 they couldn't find Dr. Douglas. He died in 1752. So obviously they didn't look too hard or ask anybody where he was, because they would have known. His funeral was a big procession. All around went. He was very well known. They would have told him he had died. So Dr. Samuel Jennison approached the town and wanted them to change the name to Jennison, because Dr. Douglas didn't do what he said he was going to do. In February 1771, his request was nearly unanimously rejected. They wanted to keep the town as it was. So people from Sherburne lost their land. They got a chance to come out to get new land. And from other towns, people from Natick and people from Holliston, they wanted to come too. And as I said, they had to pay for their lots. So, after Dr. Jennison lost his battle at State Douglas, and things went on, and the town grew, and they, once everything was settled, maybe 100 years or so later, they started having a lot of activities here. After the Civil War, in the 1860s and 70s, this was a great musical and social center. Douglas was the place to go. They had all sorts of entertainment, all sorts of ways to have fun. Some of the things they did was they had lectures. They had a lot of lectures. The East Douglas Methodist Church had 6 different courses of lectures. The Congregational Church, Mr. Tinkham Graham presented a course of 6 lectures on phrenology and physiology, so your head and your body. He showed that he had a vast knowledge of these things, and he also occasionally gave physiological examinations in his rooms at the hotel. Take that as you may. There were also lectures on whom shall we trust, on women's rights. They had traveling shows. Douglas was the center of all the activity. They all came here. They had dances at Simpson's Hall. Anybody know where Simpson's Hall used to be? Over the Douglas House of Pizza. They had a French ball at the Whiting's Hall. They had social dances. The Templars Lodge did dramas. The Odd Fellows put on presentations. In 1883, America's greatest reader and impersonator, Miss Helen Potter, did a presentation at Thayer's Hall. Thayer's Hall was above where Gregory's is now. They had roller skating rink. Everybody would come out and they would party. They'd roller skate for a while, then they'd have a dance with a full orchestra. This was the place to come. The central block where the roller skating rink was burned down. It's now where the post office is, or it was where the post office is. It was under the management of Abbott and Batchelor, and immediately popular. As I said, skating parties, masquerades, lectures. They came from Uxbridge, Whitensville, Millbury, Sutton. This was where they came. This was all where the entertainment was. The highlight of the first season at the roller skating rink was a Miss Newell of Worcester, who gave an exhibition of fancy roller skating. Her appearance filled the hall. The years were filled with dances, concerts, festivals, church fairs, minstrel shows, parades. Most notable of the parades was the Parade of Horribles. Has anybody ever heard of the Parade of Horribles?
Still have one, I mended.
Do they?
Yeah.
This refers to a type of parade where people wear grotesque costumes. And they're judged. And they could win money. First prize, they got a whole $10. And there were diminishing amounts that people won down to $1. So that's how we started. That's some of the things they did. That's how popular Douglas was. We don't think so now, but this is where they came. And they were all happy there. They, took care of themselves. They liked their town. And they had entertainment and fun. What more could you want? Obviously, it was hard work. Clearing all the land and, nothing here. You had to make everything yourself in the beginning. Of course, later, as the other towns developed too, they could draw on some of their resources. So I'm going to give you some stories. Anybody ever hear of the Fire King Engine Company? Well, Douglas, of course, had a fire department. But they didn't have any kind of a fire engine or anything, the old Pale Brigade type thing. In 1868, Douglas had 3 fires. On a Saturday afternoon at the axe mill, there was a chimney fire. The clerk there was able to put that out. No big damage. Then they almost had a fire on the roof of a house on East Main Street. The roof fire was extinguished by the fire department. The Albee house on Albee Street, that was extinguished, their fire was also extinguished with laborious water gas. That's what they did. It was hoped that these 3 fires would make the town realize they needed a fire engine. And it did. And they got one 12 years later. In 1880, they purchased a fire apparatus known as the hand tub. You could probably all picture that, where they had to pump the water to get it out of this big tank that would be on some sort of a vehicle. It was okay, but it wasn't really good for people out of town, especially if you didn't have a pond or a stream or anything near your house. It was very laborious to handle. It required 20 men or several horses to pull it. It was also necessary for 12 men to man the brakes. An up and down motion by the men pumped the water from the nearest pond or river or whatever. Just 2 weeks after it arrived, it was put to the test. On July 7th in 1890 at 9 o'clock in the morning, the shoddy mill, it's a 30-foot square wooden building of Lee and Murder Company, which was located where Haywood Landing is now, caught fire. The fire started in a carding room. Carding, they start preparing the wool to make material, they scrape all the bad hide out. So it started in that room. It was a wood building. The whole building was destroyed. Fire spread to a new brick fireproof shodding building and to a 1-story high building, which was also soon consumed. There were no fire alarms in those days. If somebody saw a fire, they went running up and down the street, fire, fire! That was the only way they could let people know. The new fire engine was promptly on the spot for those fires. But it leveled the new firehouse in a 2-story high building. It then spread to a large frame factory building of 4 stories. It also swallowed up a tenement house. The Fire King was able to save other nearby houses, but obviously you couldn't handle that much. After this fire, it was realized that the Fire King was good for small fires, not powerful enough for large ones. They also realized that was of no use for buildings further from the village, as I mentioned. So those areas still had to rely on the old pail. And hopefully you had a brook or a stream or something near your house where you could get the water. They built a new firehouse, the one on Cottage Street. They had 12 members of the fire department in 1882. In 1886, it increased to 38. Well, it had 12, then it increased to 38, and then again in 1905, it increased to 50 people. As of 1990, the Fire King fire truck is supposed to be at the Henry Ford Museum in Michigan. I have called them. I asked them about a truck called the Fire King. They said they had nothing there. I did a little more research, and I found another name that it might have been under, so I will contact them again and see if that is there. Because I think it would be nice to know that that artifact really is in the Henry Ford Museum. So those are kind of the things that were happening in the town. Other things happened in later years, such as the New York and New England Railroad. We had a train that came through town. They were new owners of the railroad, and they wanted to attract new customers. They wanted this to be special. And they came up with an original idea. Has anybody heard of the ghost train that used to come through Douglas? They built this new train. As I said, they wanted everybody to notice it. They wanted to get business. So they painted the whole train white. So when it zoomed through town, it acquired the name of the ghost train. This was a very luxurious train. Think Orient Express. It had all kinds of parlors, sitting rooms, the best of everything. It was awesome when it went through town. Of course, the ghost train had to have an engineer. The ghost train had an engineer, and his name was Eugene Everett Potter. He was born in Douglas the 28th of December, 1853. He started working for the railroad in 1872 at the age of 19. The railroad company recognized that he was a valuable employee, and on the 13th of March in 1891, the first run of the ghost train was driven by Eugene Potter. He was at the helm. They brought the railroad, and they assumed, well, like I said, they painted it right. Another company took it over, and they repainted it to the same old dull gray-black colors that you see on trains today. Horses. Horses were very important. They were critical to the town. They moved people, they moved merchandise, they pulled carriages, they plowed fields, they pulled sleighs, they pulled hearses, they pulled carriages to go court your sweetie. Horses were important to the town. There was a watering hole in town for the horses. Anybody know where that was? You know, in front of the Congregational Church at that little cement outcropping? They ran a pipe underground from the pond up behind the fire station down to that location so the horses would have a place to drink. So that's what that's all about. I wondered for a long time. That's so odd. Why is that there? That's why it was there. It was for the horses. In 1900 to 1908, Main Street was used as a racetrack. I'm sure many of you have heard they raced horses on Main Street. They did, against the gypsies, who would be encamped down by the Catholic Church down on that road down there. So they did race horses on Main Street. A lot of the people weren't happy about it, but they did it. It would just be one day a week, and a lot of people enjoyed it. So the early occupants of the town were brave. They moved to the wilderness. They built a town, they built schools, churches, businesses. They had plays, concerts, parties. They were a close community, and everybody came to Douglas for their fun and entertainment. History, as I previously mentioned, deals with what has been. In my closing, I'm going to end with a little look forward. When Mr. Coppola wrote his book, he asked some of the citizens if there were any memories they would like to include. So he gave some of them a chance to contribute to his book. One of the contributions was from Loretta Sweet. It is the last verse of a song that was taught to her in school by her teacher, Emma Jacobs. Miss Sweet could only remember the last verse, but he put it in the book anyway. I found the rest of it. The name of it was 100 Years to Come. And in closing, I'd like to recite that poem to you. It was written by W.G. Brown. Where will the birds be that sing 100 years to come? The flowers that now in beauty spring 100 years to come. The rosy lip, the lofty brow, the heart that beats so gaily now. Oh, where will be love's beaming eye, joy's pleasant smile and sorrow's sigh, 100 years to come? Who'll press for gold this crowded street 100 years to come? Who'll tread yon church with willing feet 100 years to come? In fiery youth and childhood with its brow of truth, the rich, the poor, on land and sea, where will the mighty be 100 years from now? Who will brave the dangers of the deep 100 years to come? Who will keep the watch while comrades sleep 100 years to come? The laden ship will come and go, but manned by those we do not know. The wind that wafts her o'er the waves will rock the willows on our graves 100 years to come. We all within our graves shall sleep 100 years to come. No living soul for us will weep 100 years to come. But other men our lands will till, and others then our streets will fill, while other birds will sing as gay, as bright the sunshine as today, 100 years to come. Kind of thought-provoking, isn't it? I handed out to you, or I put on the tables, these maps. As I mentioned, this is what they lost. The second map is a layout of the lots. They received 3 separate pieces of property, and men were chosen to go out to survey and mark off the lots. The people who were displaced, obviously, got to choose first. This piece is the names of all the people who chose lots to move out here and their lot numbers. Now the map that is hard to see, if you would like, I can just tell you quick how it goes. I wrote down what was where. So find my map. I have extras here if anyone should want to take one afterwards, just to review. I'm sorry, I can't find one. I have my explanations. All right, here we go. These maps here, down here, you can read the lot numbers. So if you want to look for someone's name on that sheet of paper, you can figure out where his lot was. On the dark shaded part, it's hard to read the numbers. But the top row, going across this way, it's 1 to 34. And then right below it, you go the opposite way, 34 to the next number. And then you go back this way. So it crisscrosses. It goes this way for the lot numbers. You can barely read them but on the side, I don't think I put it on there. The top is 1 to 34, 35 to 64, 65 to 90, and then you see the A, B, C, D ones. D was where Ephraim Hill had his property, thanking him for paying for the surveying and the laying out of the roads. It's kind of hard to find. And the Aldrich Farm that I had mentioned before, you'll see, is right in the middle of this. So that's the story of the town, how they got here, why they came, and some of the fun things they used to do. They enjoyed their life, and everybody came to Douglas. I put a couple of maps over there, and there's a magnifying glass on there to help you read the smaller one. But the big one is the earliest one, and you can see how few streets. I put some tags on there so you can see where the common is and different other places. And that the smaller one has more streets on it. That's why I put the magnifying glass over it. So it's two different eras. There's a couple of others from different eras too. But just seeing the difference between the few streets that they had and what happened, not a real long time afterwards, how the town changed. So that's how we got here. That's, I told you my mother was born and raised here, so I do have a connection. The Adams boys on the wall there from the services, they were my mother's cousins. So my family has deep roots here. I've always liked this town, and I plan to stay here for the rest of my life. And I hope you've learned a few things about this. Oh, there was one other thing I wanted to tell you. Recently, I was taking some photographs on a kind of hazy day of the old fire station. I thought it was a nice scene with the clouds, and a man stopped and asked me what I was doing. I said, I'm just taking some pictures. He goes, oh, they're going to tear that down, you know. I said, they are? Oh yeah, it's all settled, everybody knows it's going to be coming down. Oh, well, I better get some more pictures, and I'm glad I'm taking some pictures. I was at an event where the fire chief was there. This deputy fire chief did a presentation at the Historical Society. And of course, the chief was there too. And I asked him about that. And he said, no, I never heard that. There's no plans to take it down. So I asked him, could I get inside and take some pictures? You know, for historical purposes, to have a record of all that. And, sure, I'll go down, I'll meet you there, I'll let you in, I'll let you take some pictures. And he did. And where is my piece? There were still names on the wall of firefighters where they would hang their gear. I could still read them. I couldn't believe it. And I wrote them down so I could tell you who they were. Brian Josie, Joe Quintal, Dexter Perkins, Ed Jessam, and Ernie Marks were the names that were still legible on that faded tape. And the fire truck, I asked him, do you ever take it out? Thinking, you know, for Oktoberfest or something. He said, well, I'll take it out sometime for you if you want. So you can take some more pictures. So I'm waiting for that phone call. You take the fire truck out. And I hope to verify that the Fire King is in the Henry Ford Museum. I'm not going to give up that. I want to make sure that that's really there. So that's my introduction to the town, why and how we got here, and then some of the things that they did once they were here. Very popular town, a place to be, and everybody helped everyone. Thank you.